Okay, everybody, it's another Monday night, which means Monday Night Carlo, and this week is going to be a great one. I can feel it. I can feel it in my water, people, because we have got Paul Monaghan on the line from Retro Asylum podcast. Paul, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm not so bad, Carl. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. That's going to be a good one. I got a feeling, Paul.
No, excellent. I'm looking forward to just seeing what we can chat about tonight. Games, wrestling, TV, whatever.
I think that's all there for the taking, man. So let's just start. Let's just hear a little bit about you and your story.
Well, obviously, like I say, I'm one of the co-hosts on Retro Asylum podcast. I've been doing this now for getting on for a year. I went to Play Expo in Manchester last year and met up with a couple of the Retro Asylum team, and they said they liked my passion and wanted me to contribute towards the show. So I've always been into my games. It's like I'm 34 now, so I've experienced a lot of good platforms. 8-bit and 16-bit era going up to modern games. So I obviously had quite a lot to draw, like by memory and think of all these great times on these different machines. So, I put a couple of small bits together to use for the show. And since then, obviously, it's grown. Started doing a lot more for the show. We've had a bit of a rejig recently and tried to go for a bit of a new format, trying to make it a bit more of a magazine-type feel with things like, your news, a couple of different topics and one main topic. And it's got some good feedback, so we must be doing something right.
Yeah, I think you guys are. I think you've got some good followers now. I see you're also kind of saying you're the number one retro gaming podcast. Is that from kind of news that you've heard, or?
Well, we have been number one on the iTunes chart.
Nice.
It was about a year ago, just short of.
Right.
But in regards to shows that are specialist in retro gaming, I do feel like we are one of the best ones out there. We do offer content which covers not just, your Sega and Nintendo consoles. We also cover, your Spectrum, your Commodore 64. We recently covered the Intellivision, Atari 2600, Vectrex, so a lot of the older consoles as well. We've not really gone up to the PlayStation 2 just yet. I recently did an episode on PlayStation 1 a bit earlier in the year with one of the co-hosts, Ali, and that was really the first time we'd ever really touched upon the PS1, so there's still obviously so much that we can cover, and obviously we've all got working on our own ideas that we want to put towards the show, and I think because we've got such a mixture of hosts up and down the country, I think we're probably all aged, between 30 to early 40s, which gives us, excellent scope.
Yes.
To draw upon our memories, and obviously we've managed to get along to more and more retro gaming events. Get chatting to quite a lot of stall holders. Who do their own things like Retro Wise.
Yes.
So we've made a lot of decent contacts and things, and it's just good. Now it's starting to become like a proper retro community and everything. And obviously, I seem as get more likes on the Facebook page, more followers on Twitter, and again, just things like nice feedback on things like the website forum and things. We want people to tell us what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know exactly where you're coming from. I've been doing Monday Night Carlo for about just over a year now, and it's only just now, Paul, that I'm kind of just starting to turn the corner where they're getting sort of good numbers with Facebook followers and Twitter followers and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I had a quick look at that before. Obviously, we came on today, and like I say, I've been I picked up on your show, or we obviously chatted a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, probably a few weeks ago now, but I like what you do because obviously you cover a wide mixture of things that I'm into, and covers all bases really.
Definitely. Yeah. So I know what you mean about the PS2 library as well. That's a big library to cover there.
Oh, I know. I mean, some people say it's not exactly retro gaming. I think that's one reason why we've held back a little bit, because as soon as you touch a PS2, you could do an entire, a few months worth of podcasts just on that, definitely. Well,
Do you know what? I'm going to stick my neck out right now, and I'm going to tell you this. I think, personally, the PS2 is the greatest games console ever made, and I'm not just saying that. I'm just looking at the games and the actual content covered on PS2. I think if you look at the library, there are some absolute classics in there.
No, I agree to a point with some of that, because you've also got like a lot of new series that obviously really started taking off there. Obviously, Call of Duty games, Grand Theft Auto made a massive leap from
Yes.
your PS1 and everything. You still had your Final Fantasy games, which I know would be going for years. I personally think they lost their way a bit after PS2,
Yes.
because I've always been into me role-playing games. And I think just the amount of titles, like you say, that were available. And I suppose it's that PlayStation brand, because one thing that I've mentioned a few times is with like the PS1, it started out as a console that was, for that sort of adult market,
Yes. Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
clubs and things like that. But then by the end of the PS1 lifespan, bearing in mind it stayed in market for years, it was more of a starter console for kids. So you've gone all the way from your Wipeout, Tomb Raider, Tekken, and it finished up with, I know, a load of kiddie games and things. And I think the PS2 sort of went that way.
Yeah.
But then obviously PS3, I'm not going to touch upon because that's definitely not retro yet. But but I've got a lot of good memories from PS2, definitely.
I just think with the PS2, that's also when kind of my teenage years, when I was just getting into games like a lot. Like I remember the SNES and the Mega Drive and stuff as a kid, and I'm not knocking those at all because they are absolute classic consoles. But the thing with the PS2 is, I think with the wrestling as well is, obviously we'll talk about that later. But I think the best time for you is when it connected with you the most. And I remember the amazing wrestling games that you used to get on PS2 and stuff like that. And I think that's why that connected with me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they were a massive step up.
Yes.
The PS2 wrestling games. Although when I do get talk about wrestling games, I absolutely loved SmackDown 2 on PS1.
Yes.
Because it just had more or less a never-ending story mode. But yeah, like you say, I'm not going to touch on wrestling too much because that's, God, I can go on about that for quite a while.
That's definitely something that we're going to come to, man. But
no, definitely.
Tell us something about the podcast and what the games were that inspired you guys to make one in the first place.
Well, like I say, the podcast now, it's been going for about 3 years.
Right.
Started out just with two of the guys. Andy was the original, one of the founder members.
Okay.
He left a couple of months ago, which then, in this time, the last, I'd say, year or so, members have been added to the team, all got our own ideas. So for me, I wanted to share, like say, my memories, and I like when you can obviously just connect with people and go, yeah, I remember that. I remember doing this. I mean, I've just recently did a little bit just on cover discs and cover tapes, and had a bit of feedback back for that. Remembering having to go into certain news agencies, and you'd have to ask for cover discs from behind the counter.
That's right.
Because you'd always just get robbed otherwise.
Yeah.
But then it's also hearing people's memories of the first game they played on, like the Super Nintendo, buying, £2-3 games for, the Commodore 64 or the Spectrum or whatever. So, it's all those sort of memories. I mean, back then, obviously, like I say, I'm 34, so, but, it wasn't £40-odd games.
Yeah.
But still games relatively cheap and everything, and some were a lot better than others. But I think it is just, that's the thing with retro gaming, it's reliving your memories. And the thing is, though, it can be a very expensive hobby. So
yes.
I've fallen foul the odd time of buying far too much and then selling it on, and now rebuying it, but I'm trying to be a bit more disciplined. I don't want to be bankrupting myself just on some games. But again, I'm sure we can all agree, the older you get, the less time you have as well. So
definitely,
it's all very well spending £60 on a game, but if you don't get time to go on it, it's just on your shelf. But yeah, that's the main reason why I wanted to join Retro Asylum, and that was to obviously discuss gaming memories and start a lot of retro chat. And I think in the last year that's definitely happened.
I'm in the same boat, man. I'm exactly the same age as you, which is weird but cool. And what was the console for you that kind of brings the most memories? What is the console that kind of made you fall in love with gaming?
Well, my first machine was my Atari ST.
Right.
When I was about 10. Now I've said like on our own show in the past, but I really wanted an Amstrad 464 because my mate had one, and I was absolutely gutted when I got this Atari ST, even though it was a better machine. And so I kept that for a couple of years. But I think when I actually think of my golden age of gaming, really, it is the 16-bit era on the Super Nintendo.
Nice.
I had friends who had the Mega Drive, because again, back then you usually had one or the other. You'd never really had both.
That's right.
So I remember having 4, possibly 5 games to my Super Nintendo. You usually get them for birthdays and Christmas. There was only a couple of shops near me that traded games, and even then you didn't get that much credit for them. So sometimes you'd be getting rid of 3 or 4 games and coming away with one new release and one tatty older game. And the Super Nintendo, though, you had obviously Mario World, Mario Kart, Castlevania, obviously things like FIFA came out on it, the multi-tap and playing 4-5 player FIFA, the Bomberman. There's just so many great memories.
It's classics.
Yeah, definitely. And again, because it had a lot of role-playing games, and that's what I enjoyed at the time.
I think what's really cool is as well, when you're a kid, you always had, like you say, the mate that had the other console, so you could always go around your mates. I can always remember going around my mates and playing Mega Drive, because I was like you, I had the SNES, and I remember going around my friends and playing like Truxton and stuff on the Mega Drive, and it would just blows me away, man.
No, definitely. I mean, I really liked going around to my mate's Crossroad, because he had Mega Drive with Toe Jam and Earl.
Oh, yeah.
And Streets of Rage 2. And obviously, with those games being exclusive to, the Mega Drive,
yes.
I thought these are to Sega, I thought these are absolutely fantastic. But I think it's the best way to obviously experience both sides.
Yeah.
And there's no way I could have had both. No, it's like the games at the time, like I say, were £40 and that's the thing now, which is one of the better things about collecting retro games now. You can afford both machines.
Yes.
And have a bit of a library for each console.
I think as I've gotten older as well, I like to collect the consoles that I never had when I was a kid. Like at the minute, my retro gaming consists of the Mega Drive because I didn't have one, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, but then I picked up like an N64, which I don't spend that much time on. But at the time, I owned my PS1, and I do struggle to get into the N64.
Yeah.
I know a lot of good games for it, but I think it's more of a time thing as well. If I do want to just load up, up a game or whatever, it really is one of the 16-bit consoles.
I think as well, we missed upon an absolute classic, because I remember No Mercy, WWF No Mercy on the N64, and the WCW World Tour, and both of them were amazing games.
Yeah, I've not played the WCW one though, but
right.
I have got Mercy upstairs. I picked that up fairly recently off eBay.
How much was that, Paul?
That actually only cost me about £8. That was boxed.
Not bad.
With that, and I had a bit of a go on it, and it's got such a big roster.
Yes.
I think it's like 50 wrestlers, including the divas. So yeah, it's still good now. Obviously, it doesn't look really, really nice.
I was going to say, how does it play now?
It still plays all right. You've still got the wrestlers' intros. Bearing in mind it's not on a CD, so obviously the music isn't as clear as the SmackDown games on PS1.
Yes.
But it's still not so bad. I spent a good hour or so on it when it came through the door about a month ago.
I mean, that is very cool. If I had to pin you down, though, do you have kind of a top 5 gaming chart?
God, in no proper order. Streets of Rage 2 is up there.
Nice.
Final Fight, because I've always liked the scrolling beat 'em ups. I'm gonna say Monkey Island.
Oh yes.
I know, and again, I absolutely love the episode that you did with Ron Gilbert. And I'd say Dungeon Master as well on the Atari ST. And I'm going to say Mario Kart on a Super Nintendo, because I know it's like a bit basic compared to the others, but it's where it all began.
I
so
think
it's like 5 off the top of my head.
that is a very good choice, man. I think Mario Kart is just an ultimate classic for me. I've got a Wii U, and I love Mario Kart 8, but you can never ever beat the SNES version, you know?
No, definitely. I was spent on that. I mean, that's just one thing. I've not got a Wii U yet, and it is something that is very, very tempting, but it just comes down to time.
Yes.
Really. And if I'm not really going to go on it, I don't really want to obviously take the plunge and just have it sat there at the moment. But again, with things like Smash Brothers coming out, and
I was going to say, I think like the thing is, Paul, a lot of people knock the Wii U, but I love it. I absolutely love it. Plus, there's a lot of games now that I think the Wii U is starting to come into its own. I mean, with the Mario World game and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of Mario Kart is like exclusive, obviously. So there's a lot Super Smash Brothers and Zelda games and all that kind of thing coming in. I think that's going to be good.
No, definitely. And quite a few people now say that at the moment, as it stands, it is the Wii U for being the best, well, next/current gen console in regards to games. I know it's had a bit of a head start, and it had a bit of a slow beginning, really, but it does seem to be the console for fun. And people do knock Nintendo, but I don't know if it's just because I think back of all the great Nintendo memories, and when you see kids today, I'm going to sound like an old man here, but they all just want Call of Duty. They all want Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
If you put something like Mario 3D World in front of them, which is a fantastic game, and I've only played it a bit, but it's not going to hold their attention. They're just going to go, where are the guns? Not all kids. I'm not pigeonholing everyone, but
yes.
I'm just speaking from experience that when I've worked in game shops and things like that over years, it's I
think if there's one thing that little kids love, though, that's the handhelds. Because if there's one thing with Nintendo that you cannot knock, that is their history of handhelds. They've sold so many of those.
Oh, definitely. I mean, from owning, the original Game Boy as a kid.
Yeah.
Having the Advance SP, and then also, the DS, and I've not got a DSi or anything, but I think obviously with handheld gaming versus mobile gaming, again, it's still Nintendo who have the edge. It just feels a lot nicer playing stuff on an actual handheld than on, say, a mobile phone or your iPhone or anything.
I think what's funny as well is I can remember as a kid like wasting so many hours on a flight, because I remember going with my parents to like Florida and stuff, to Disney World, and killing like 7 hours of an 8-hour flight just playing Super Mario Land 2.
Oh, see, that's a great game. I mean, that's one thing I've got for me Super Nintendo. Like, I've got the Super Game Boy, so again, you can play it on a bigger screen and everything as well. But I remember being abroad. I think it was just a holiday in Spain, and spending most of a holiday just playing that. That Mario Land 2, amazing game, absolutely amazing.
That's one thing I need to pick up, man. If that's one thing I miss, is the old school Game Boy. I mean, do you get a lot of requests for those kind of games as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we always have stuff, like in the pipeline and things like that. But again, it's like, I've got a few myself and everything, and I sometimes just like popping them in because they're quite simple and pick up and play.
Yeah.
The old Game Boy games and everything like that. And again, you can get them for, well, if you're not bothered about the boxes and stuff and just cart only, you can get them for a decent price, from like £1 upwards. That's not including your postage, obviously, but it's still not so bad. And there's just so many Game Boy games. I mean, I never got into Pokemon. I think I was too old for it. Well, the way I saw it, 'cause I think it was about 17, 18 when Pokemon came onto the scene.
Yeah.
And my brother having it, and he absolutely loved it, and he was like, oh God, he's 21 now, so he's 13 years younger than me. And I remember him getting like the Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer and just printing out these rubbishy little stickers.
That's right.
Yeah, it's very primitive.
I remember stuff like what was it called? The SNES game, the Mario Paint. I remember stuff like that.
Yeah. Mario Paint with the mouse.
Yeah.
Sadly, that mouse only actually worked on a couple of games, and even games such as, say, Cannon Fodder and Lemmings, it didn't work with. Well,
really.
Well, it definitely didn't with Cannon Fodder because I've had that in my collection recently.
I remember even like the Super Scoop as well.
Yeah. Again, there was only a few games to that. One called Battle Clash that wasn't that great.
That's right.
You had Yoshi's Safari, which got slightly better reviews, but yeah, it didn't really do so much. It's like again on the Mega Drive, with the Menacer gun, and that only had a couple.
Yes.
Terminator 2, the arcade game, which I have got upstairs in my collection, but I don't own a Menacer, so if I ever did go on it, it'd be controlling it with the joypad. So yeah, I'm not exactly rushing for that.
So I want to talk wrestling with you, but before we do this, I just want to talk about, because we're of the same generation, Paul, we've got to have this kind of kinship here. We need to talk cartoons. What was your cartoons when you were a kid growing up, man?
My favourite one was Mask.
Nice.
The whole Mask versus Venom. Because sometimes I mention Mask and people go, "Oh, based on a Jim Carrey film." It's like, no, Mobile Armored Strike Command.
Yes.
I also loved Jason the Wheel Warriors with the old monster mines and all of that. I thought that was fantastic.
Awesome.
I wasn't into Transformers too much. I loved Action Force. It's mainly things like Action Force and Mask. I owned so many of the toys as well, so obviously it was great as a kid. And you're going, oh God, I can't wait for him to bring out that toy, and definitely have that figure. And as far as I know, I might be wrong on this, but I never saw any like Jason the Wheel Warriors toys, and I absolutely loved that cartoon. And those are the main ones. Then you got things like, on BBC around tea time with things like Willy Fogg and stuff like that, and Mysterious Lost Cities of Gold.
Yes.
So yeah, there's a lot definitely, and then obviously not cartoons. You got stuff like Round the Twist, and there's all sorts. Really, really, really is.
I think for me, I can remember as a kid, the main cartoon for me was the Turtles. I absolutely loved Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. And stuff like Dog Tanyan, I remember that.
Oh, of course, of course. They've got DVDs upstairs of that as well. I always forget about that.
What a classic that was, man!
Oh, definitely.
And that really annoyed me with Mask, because I used to like Mask, not as much as my friend. I had a friend that really dug it, but what really annoyed me was at school, I think people just saw it as kind of a rip-off to Transformers and that kind of stuff, and I remember getting in playground arguments about it,
No, I mean, I just always liked Mask. I mean, the big thing for me was, again, seeing it on the show, but also with the actual toys, was the vehicles changing, just from the truck to, a truck with guns, for example, and then obviously the car to a flying car.
Yeah.
And we get that to a point with Transformers, but I don't know, it's a totally different universe. I've got to sound like such a Mask fanboy here. But I remember as a kid getting a couple of Transformers toys, and I'm not going to say disappointed because that's a bit strong, but it wasn't Mask.
No. Do you still Paul? Do you still collect the DVD box sets, like the actual Mask ones and stuff now? Do you have them?
I've got one of Series 1. I think it lost, in regards to the Mask cartoon, it sort of, and the toys really, it lost its way when we started doing this Speedway type series where it was all about the racing.
Right.
And they also brought out these toys where you get a character, a figure, whatever, and then you'd also get some sort of like computer sort of hologram type version in a double pack.
Yes.
I have, seen which ones are available on the internet, because it's been years since obviously I've had a proper look at the toys, because the ones I had, which were left up at my mum's, were just, let's say, well played with, and some of them have got limbs missing, and wheels have come off cars that have taken tumbles downstairs or played with outside and gone flying, you know. So again, toys that were well played with.
Yeah, I mean, just by saying that, I've also remembered some more classics like Visionaries, and
Yeah, that was good, definitely.
that was pretty cool. Obviously, I remember stuff like Transformers, like you said, and just so many classic cartoons. But I think Turtles was the one for me. Did you ever used to watch that as well?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back. I mean, I did watch it, and I also remember buying the Turtle sort of poster comic.
Yes.
It must have been about 10. And again, it folded out. You got the massive posters, and I remember having those on my wall. So, God, I'm going back. It's almost 25 years getting on for now.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I remember having those, and obviously when the first Turtles film came out, I absolutely loved it and everything. So. And then there's all the time, you know, when you're out playing with your mates going, right, we'll play Turtles, I'm going to be Raphael, and you're making your own weapons out of, cardboard and stuff like that.
There was only two cartoons for me that I held as my all-time favourites, and that is Turtles and Brave Star as well. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember it. Guy across the road, mate across the road, he used to like it. I just couldn't get into it. I remember the toys being quite big and chunky, like the Thundercats toys.
Yes. And
decent size compared to Mask and stuff like that.
I think they're pretty rare, Paul. I think a lot of them.
I've not seen them for a while, though, to be fair. I do remember, obviously, the main guy from Brave Star. I remember the horse. But yeah, I've not seen those for ages. Same with things like Thundercats, you know, the original Thundercats toys, not the ones that were reissued a few years ago.
So let's go on to current gaming. Do you do gaming on current, like next-gen consoles, or do you not concern yourself with those?
Well, I do in a way. I mean, I've not got a PS4 or anything yet.
No.
So I've still got my PS3, and there's so many games I still need to catch up properly with on that. I really like things like the Uncharted games.
Yes.
I loved the last Tomb Raider game. I thought that was fantastic.
I had a lot of feedback about that, man. A lot of my friends are telling. I haven't played it myself, but a lot of my friends tell me it was awesome.
No, it really was. It had a good, strong storyline, and I think that's just it. And this comes down to, obviously, going off your podcast, you're into your films as well. So when you're making more or less a proper cinematic game,
yes,
fair enough, it's got... I don't like really, really long cutscenes, but as long as it's a cutscene that actually adds something to the story and it's not too drawn out,
yeah,
it's the right balance, and I think that's what Uncharted and Tomb Raider does really well.
I think Uncharted is just so good as a game as well. It I don't know how the movie's going to turn out, if they're going to make. I think they're making one, but for me, it's just there's no need for a movie because that's a gaming movie that you just play along with, but are so well put together. Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly. That's one of the things I've always thought about when you see like movie tie-ins not being as popular anymore. I think it's mainly because games now have got to that stage where they've got massive budgets,
yeah,
and the sort of films within themselves, with you actually controlling the character to a point, with what we were just saying about the Tomb Raider games. And it's absolutely stunning. But then I'm still catching up again on things like Red Dead Redemption, games which have been out for a good few years. That obviously slipped by me, and it just comes down to obviously time again. Really.
Have you played The Last of Us yet?
Yes. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
What a game that was!
Yeah, in fact. Traded that in stupidly, and I wish I hadn't. But if I do get a PS4 down the line, I'd just get the the remastered one, because that Last of Us was fantastic. And again, another perfect example of the sort of feel of a film in a game.
That is exactly right. I also get into them games through Silent Hill, because for me, Silent Hill was one of my favourite franchises. And
again, that's not one I've played too much. I do remember renting out Silent Hill 1 from Blockbuster.
Right.
And I remember obviously the air raid siren going off, and then obviously everything changing and the monsters coming after you. But I think at the time I was just so into Resident Evil instead. It was one or the other.
Yeah.
I remember saying Parasite Eve 2 as well, which again had that sort of horror element. It's not a stupidly rare PS1 game, but I couldn't get into that so much either. I think with certain games, I just stick to one certain series, and
Yes.
quite biased like that. Although Resident Evil has lost its way quite.
That's funny because I kind of agree with you on that, because when I was back in the day when I first got into the WWF, and the wrestling, I was so much a WWF fan that I didn't want to hear about WCW. I didn't want to know about WCW. I didn't want anyone telling me about WCW, because to me there was only one thing, and that was WWF. Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly. The thing is, though, I think being in the UK, and again, because we're the same age, we had that sort of Sky Sports boom of WWF. So we had like SummerSlam '92 at Wembley Arena. We had all the sticker albums, the cards. So you're swapping, trading, in the playground and things. You had obviously the videos which were coming out. You had obviously the shows on Sky Sports and stuff. But in regards to WCW, I wouldn't even know where to find that. And I think the other big thing, which I'm skipping on a few years, but I think what sums up for me is I used to collect like all the wrestling pay-per-views on video. I've got them like all on DVD now. But I'll move on to that because I'm like torn, because I don't know what's going to happen with the network in the UK.
Yes.
But when it comes to all the WWF events, you could get them easily in Woolworths, in HMV and things. But in regards to the WCW ones, even in the Monday Night Wars era, you've got things like the NWO being massive, but you still never really saw the videos.
No.
Because the ones that were like listed on eBay were always NTSC format. So obviously,
that's right.
You'd have to make sure you could play them. And again, they were selling for stupid money. Granted, I'm going back, probably 6 or 7 years now when I was having a look.
I hear you, man. I remember those days. And I remember also me and my brother used to stay up really late at night, because it used to be the only time we used to catch WCW, I think, was on RTL. Do you remember the German channel on Sky?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I just listened to another podcast. I can't remember which one it is, and they mentioned that WCW was really, really big in Germany.
That's right.
I listened to so many yesterday. So obviously that does sort of makes sense, really.
So let's go back right to the start. Let's talk wrestling then, man. So tell me how you very first got into wrestling, and what it was about the product that caught your eye.
Well, I think, like I say, I must have been about 10, being around at a mate's. He had Sky, we didn't. And the first angle that I remember was Shawn Michaels basically throwing Marty Jannetty through the barbershop window and obviously starting the Shawn Michaels heel turn.
Yes.
And for me, I'd say ever since that day, Shawn Michaels has always been my favourite wrestler. And you're thinking now, so many years on, I know he's obviously retired now, but
still regarded as a true icon,
Oh yeah, and for me, it was the charisma. So I think obviously I always liked him, but from the age we are, it was always Warrior or Hogan.
Yes.
So I always liked Ultimate Warrior more than Hulk Hogan. So obviously when he sadly passed away earlier this year, I was just like distraught, thinking, God, I'm 34 and it's just so sad. But then you also had, Macho Man, who was, another one who's no longer here. He was obviously another sort of big major star. And the way I try and see today's product, don't I? I'm going to go back to where it started.
Yeah.
I was trying to have a look at how many big stars you had back then throughout all the time I've watched it, and then obviously with your upper mid card and things like that, because like when we were starting out, you had people like Mr. Perfect. A little bit on, you had Razor Ramon, and going into mid-90s and everything, and obviously Shawn Michaels was like that upper mid-card for quite a while, and then obviously WWF sort of just hit a bit of a dry patch in the mid-90s.
Yes.
I still watched it, I still didn't go to any other
No.
programme.
I feel you. I've done exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, they've always had, like, stars that that you can latch on to and things, seeing people like, another one I totally forgot from, it's who I absolutely loved, Jake the Snake, obviously.
Yes. I think if you look at that, Paul, if you look at how many wrestlers there were in the WWF back in the day that could have easily been WWF champion and never were. There's so many, man. I mean, Jake the Snake Roberts never been a champion, let alone a WWF champion. Never been Intercontinental champion. You look at Ted DiBiase as well, the $1 Million Man. I think one time he tried to buy the WWF championship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's just it though. But you still had, people like Ted DiBiase. They carried on till probably about 93, when he was like part of Money Inc. and everything.
Yes.
And then obviously going on being a manager with his $1 million stable of team or whatever. And it's moments like, when I think back to being a kid, it's things like the Survivor Series match with all the Doinks versus,
Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, Jerry Lawler with his midget wrestlers. And, some of it is just absolutely ridiculous. But then obviously you've got, your first early WWF ladder matches.
Yes.
You've got early Undertaker casket matches. So I think back and there's so many major memories. And I don't know, again, if it's just because obviously the product's changed over years, but I struggle to think of any really, really major turning points for the modern day product. I would say the last time I thought it was truly, I'm going to use the word amazing, was going to I'd say when Shawn Michaels was feuding with Triple H towards about 2002 to 2004, and it shows that was a massive feud because they're even using that feud in the 2K15 game as one of the sort of stories to play through.
Yeah.
And it's obviously before the whole Chris Benoit tragedy, so you still got, the violence and everything, and that feud ending up in like this Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood 2004, I think it was about May time. And it was an amazing match. I mean, the fact, like, when Shawn Michaels had come back in 2002 for SummerSlam, and in fact, this is one of the things I always remember, it's like the whole sort of him coming back when they tried to bring the NWO to WWF, and then Shawn was coming out as a member, Triple H turning on him, and it was just oozing so much hatred for each other and anger, and it went on for quite a while, this feud, and it was absolutely fantastic. And it just gave me a chance to see people like, I always get mocked for this, but Kevin Nash back in it, because even though I know he can't really wrestle, he's sort of got that sort of cool, cocky charisma, and I absolutely love it.
I mean, I think there's something about Kevin Nash. I've always been a massive Scott Hall fan. I loved him when he was Razor Ramon, and there's always something about him,
Yeah, definitely. I think it is just that sort of cool factor, and I think that's what obviously got the NWO over so well as well, because they were the sort of cool heels. But then, like, when I listen to wrestling podcasts now, that's one thing that they do have a problem with, that now everyone wants to be a cool heel. And I think this is one reason why you don't get any proper hated bad guys. Obviously, you have people like Bray Wyatt, and there's moments where obviously all the crowd are chanting along and everything, and I like to think that he will have a decent career, but I would say over the last few years, and you must have seen it yourself, you think, oh, this guy's getting a proper push, and then they just cut it so quickly. And it's a bit sad.
I think what really annoys me about Bray Wyatt is, if you think, how good would he have been in the Attitude Era?
Oh, definitely.
How dark would they have made that character for a start?
Well, I think you probably look at something like, going back to the Undertaker Ministry, and
yes,
obviously that sort of darkness, it's obviously just an era that'll never come back. Obviously they have shareholders to appease and everything.
That's
and
the thing.
TV rights and
I think
toys.
If you think about it like this, Paul, if the worrying fact about it is the bottom line is that the PG product makes it what it is, but the PG product is there because of the USA Network, which sponsors the WWE, which provides all their all their programming, Raw and stuff. But the USA Network is the only TV company in the States that wanted the WWE.
Yeah, so when you've no bargaining power, it obviously does make things very, very difficult. I mean, I'm just trying to think. While it's been the PG era, we have still had some really, really good matches. You know, obviously most of the Brock Lesnar matches since he's come back, obviously he adds that realism, and now they know those are the matches they have to build up, as we've seen, at SummerSlam. And then you've got, when CM Punk was in it, he's had some really good matches, and so they can do it when they really, really want to.
This is exactly what I was going to. This is exactly what I was going to say, because if you look at SummerSlam, to me, SummerSlam was a brilliant pay-per-view, and that, just exactly like you said, that proves exactly what they can do when they put their mind to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was really impressed by SummerSlam and everything, but before we were talking today, we were just obviously mentioned, if you had caught Monday Night Raw, and
yes.
There's a few people I'll speak to about, wrestling and things, and this goes back to the damage they do to people as well, because I don't know, obviously, if you've seen the main event where it's John Cena, Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Yeah, they more or less make Bray Wyatt look very, very weak to try and obviously re-push Cena. But then again, you need to obviously be, keeping Bray Wyatt strong. Like when John Cena and Bray Wyatt had the feud, they left it with Bray Wyatt, elevated. And that's why the likes of Chris Jericho come back, to help give something back to the industry, that put Jericho in the limelight for so long. And then all it takes is one stupid mistake. I mean, I don't understand what happens with the likes of Dolph Ziggler and Damien Sandow.
Yeah.
And, the list does go on. Jack Swagger. These are ones that are just constantly having to be reheated. You think they're going to come back up, and then they fade away again.
There's so many wrestlers there that could easily be top brass in that company. And so many people have said to me, especially my friends, have said to me about Dolph Ziggler. I mean, the guy to me has got so much talent, and I don't know who he's upset in the WWE, but every single time he gets anywhere near the top, he gets pushed down again. But to me, it's just easy to switch that around. Instead of having people like has-beens like Batista win a Royal Rumble, you could have used that spot to push and elevate someone that actually needs it, and that's to me what really aggravates me, because at the end of the day, it has to be said that the only reason Batista won the Royal Rumble is because Guardians of the Galaxy was coming out.
Yeah, definitely. But what did that actually gain him? Nothing.
Exactly.
That complete run, as everyone knows, was a complete washout.
As a complete farce.
If he does come back some point, before the end of the year, we'll see what happens. But then again, it's not just this, I'm going to say wrestlers, the wrestlers on Raw. It's also ones on NXT. I do watch that.
I do.
And you get a lot of decent wrestlers on there, but you also get a lot of the ones which have fallen from Raw, such as Adam Rose and a few others as well. And obviously they try and push these new stars, really.
I think, to be honest, Paul, I'm going to say it, I think I watch NXT more than WWE, because some of the matches in NXT are actually a decent length, decent wrestling, and some of the pay-per-views have been phenomenal for NXT.
Yes, I watched the last NXT one. Was it the
Takeover? Yeah.
Charlotte Flair versus
what a match!
Which was amazing, absolutely amazing.
And how good was it that they catered to the old school fans, having Brett and Rick on the outside of the ring as well?
I know, everything worked so well. I mean, It's got such a bright future. I don't know if you watch. Do you watch TNA as well, or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Now, I watched their latest pay-per-view, the Hardcore Justice, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got its moments, but it makes me a bit sad, really, because in, probably about 2004, I started watching TNA. I've been watching it live a couple of times, and I'd say in the last couple of years, it just seems to have lost its way quite a bit.
Yeah.
With obviously the top big names ready to leave or have left, and now there's obviously Bully Ray and Kurt Angle who look like they're on the way out.
And Velvet Sky as well, I think.
Right, okay, so that's another, on the knockout side, another big name. So I do wonder what's going to happen with that, and obviously their ratings have never really improved.
I think the saddest part about it is I went to Florida in 2009 and I watched No Surrender live where AJ won the World Championship. And it was absolutely amazing, Paul. Like, I've been to WWE pay-per-views as well, and I've never experienced a crowd like it. And when you see something as hot as that product at that time, to me, I was watching more TNA than I was WWE in that kind of 2009, 2008 period, because I love the wrestling in it. I love the high-flying X Division stuff. So to me, just like you said, it's really sad times,
Yeah, it's sort of, for me, I think it was probably about 2007 to 2009.
Yes.
Where it had that perfect mixture of the X Division, and it had so many great wrestlers. It still had quite a few big name WWE stars, and it was just when when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff came in at the start of 2010.
I was going to say
it just started losing its way. Yeah.
I don't want to knock Hulk Hogan because Hulk Hogan's a wrestling icon, but he was the cancer of TNA, to be honest, because they didn't even need him.
No, I know. He didn't do anything to boost ratings, and it was more of the fact that he was obviously there to promote himself, because obviously he wasn't in favour with WWE at the time.
Yes.
So obviously it was to obviously keep his name out there, which, you know what, fair enough, it's self-promotion, I understand that. But if he is being paid a lot of money by TNA, I don't see why he couldn't have been promoting the company he worked for, Now, fair enough, some of the decisions he made was, stupid ones, and I remember the first show when it went up against Raw and on the sort of new Monday Night Wars, and TNA got absolutely battered.
That was even better though when they didn't even try to compete, Paul. I think that their biggest mistake was changing the look to make it look like a kind of watered down SmackDown, which it does now with the blue and white. But also just even trying to compete with the WWE is way better when it was its own product.
Yeah, exactly. Again, with the X Division, I've never had a problem with a six-sided ring. It was its own style,
exactly,
and everything. And you're never ever going to be able to compete with WWE. Never.
No. I think the thing is with WWE, the WWE has the history, and nothing has ever come close to the history of WWE, and that's what people dig. The only thing that ever come close to that was WCW, which is now dead, but I think that TNA were brilliant as that alternative product. I remember some brilliant Ultimate X matches, like even with Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt and all them kind of guys,
Yeah, no, proper decent wrestlers. I mean, when I started out in 2004, luckily I've got some of the DVDs from when I've been to wrestling events, and you're looking back with Christopher Daniels, in a lot of these matches and things, and I think that's what I can't get my head around, that we've let people like AJ Styles go, Christopher Daniels, Kazarian, and it's just been so many of the high flyers. Fair enough, we brought a few back in, but again, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, all my favourites left.
Yeah.
So I was in no reason or mood to carry on watching it, and I would say it was October last year. I just stopped and I just dipped in every so often.
So let's nip back to the WWE. I want to talk a bit about the network. I want to know what you've kind of heard about the network UK wise, because I've heard like in the US. there's a lot of rumblings about it. They're going to charge more for the pay-per-views because they know the pay-per-views are included on the 12-month subscription. But apparently, after the Royal Rumble, they're going to start charging excess amounts for the pay-per-views.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to get that feeling anyway. We'll deal with the US side first of all. I think what it comes down to is the fact we've had that. Well, I know it doesn't affect us just yet, but we keep saying that $9.99,
Yep.
and they're saying you get all of this year's pay-per-views up to the Royal Rumble.
Exactly.
So, like you say there, Carl, it's just right. Well, after Royal Rumble, then it starts the sort of WrestleMania hype. Now, I don't know if they're just going to start it out by saying, well, we'll still do all of them, but you've got to say, buy the Royal Rumble for, say, $30 or $40 if you're a network subscriber. If you're not, then it's going to be $70 or $80. So I think they'll probably try and do it that way to sort of soften the blow a little bit. But then again, that's how the thing started over here. Like when they started going on Sky Box Office and pay-per-views in the UK. We used to have them all on Sky Sports, and then it used to be
That's right.
2 or 3 of them onto Box Office,
That's
and
right.
now there's only 2 on Sky Sports, and I think even that's ceased now because of the deal that Sky signed with WWE, which does lead me on to the UK side, because I don't know what deal we're going to get. I would be absolutely amazed if we get it less than $12.99 a month, and I don't think we'll get the pay-per-views. I believe, and this is only a guess, that the best they can really offer us is something like, if you're a network subscriber, we'll knock you some money off, something, because otherwise Sky are going to have lost a lot of money, and they only signed a new deal, I think it was about February time.
I think also that the network's biggest problem is the price point, because I think they now come to realise that the amount of subscribers they've got, they aren't making enough money. Hence why I think they'll, like you say, they'll probably up the subscription or make a reduction to the pay-per-views. But I think they'll probably just double the rate to $19 or $15. And I think that, like the UK, the biggest problem with the UK, the WWE network, is going to be the license agreements,
Yeah, I mean, I can't see how they could even get away with doubling it. Just going back to US side, because the last I heard, obviously, I listened to a few wrestling podcasts,
right,
and they talk about, say, I think it was 700,000 subscribers, and they were hoping to be hitting roughly 1 million.
That's right.
Now, they'll probably only hit 1 million, even worldwide. Hence bringing forward, obviously, the worldwide rollout of the network. But you can't be just going from $10 to $20. Even $15 would be a push.
Yeah.
Because people will say, hang on a minute, that's gone up by 50%. It's quite a big jump, and they've already tried to cut back on the original programming to save money. They've let wrestlers leave to save money because of the price point. The figures that I've read in things like Power Slam magazine or Fighting Spirit, they say that they're looking at losing about 50 million because of a pay-per-view buy loss. Well, you know what I mean. And
yes.
You think it's crazy money to lose that much money. And the other thing is, you're saying for $9.99 a month, you get all these shows, and you also get the pay-per-view. Remember, like, over here in the UK, it was like, what, £15 a pay-per-view. Over in the US, you were looking at $50, $60.
I know, man. I can't. Do you know something funny? I was only until a few months ago when I was in the States, and we thought about hiring a pay-per-view, that I only just realised exactly how much more the Americans have to pay for those.
No, exactly. But then again, we do have quite a few, from what I've heard, like quite a few bars will put them on and things, so obviously maybe a bit of an entrance fee.
I see.
I mean, that'd be okay, if obviously, I can't see pubs over here showing a wrestling event.
No.
Maybe something like WrestleMania if there was a bit of it, demand for it. But something like that would be, interesting. But if I lived in the US, there's not a chance I would spend so much money on a pay-per-view.
No.
Not when I've seen so many poor pay-per-views. In fact, the only ones that I've actually ordered myself in the UK have been WrestleManias for the last few years, because again, make it more of an event, have family around, a couple of drinks, snacks, and things.
That's the thing, when you can spread the cost, that's not so bad. So
Yeah,
how
exactly.
do you feel about the network, and what do you think are the biggest downfalls to the network?
Well, again, from what they advertise that's on it this week, they say like, oh, we're showing the first 100 hours of WCW Nitro. So something like that, I think, brilliant. I'll watch it. But then again, it's having the time. I've already said before, you only have so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
Again, either catch up on, work, games, family, friends. So what it comes down to at times is it doesn't really matter about the price point. It's also, do you have time to even watch it? So if someone says, well, look, it's only £12 a month, but then if you think, well, I already watch Raw, I watch SmackDown, I watch NXT, and I've stopped watching TNA, but you think altogether, alright, you fast forward through bits, but it still adds up to, say, 8 hours a week
Yes.
of wrestling, which is plenty. I think the only time where you'd actually get your money's worth is if you've obviously got a week off work or whatever, and you can really sit down and watch it. I already said earlier, I've got all the wrestling pay-per-views on DVD.
Exactly.
And yeah, they take up a load of room, but I know they're not going to lag or anything like that. Obviously, I'll look after my stuff anyway, but if I want to just watch a match, then obviously I'll just, pick out a DVD. But I tell you what, in the last few years, I've only done that a couple of times.
I think the biggest, there's two problems for me with the network, Paul. One is the fact that where I live in Norfolk, but I live in the sticks. So to me, my internet is just not good enough to stream it. And two, I think the biggest problem with the network is the rating. The WWE is kind of angled towards kids, but that's not the kids that are going to have the credit cards to sign up to the network.
No, of course. I mean, that's just it, though. The knock-on effect, for WWE is they could be showing things from the Attitude Era, and that could get people wanting that sort of product again.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll ever be that much demand. I think maybe say in 10 years' time, everything obviously goes surrounding, eras type thing.
Yeah.
And I do believe that at some point people will want a bit more of a hard-hitting WWE.
Yes.
I don't think obviously it's time at the moment. Not while again they constantly push John Cena and it's not going to work. I know, fair enough. Over the years, he was in really good feuds with Edge.
Yes.
And he's had good feuds again, like CM Punk and things. But then I've seen it just, they treat him like a superhero, hence the whole Super Cena. And I try not to get annoyed watching it, and I try and think, well, you know what? If you think of him like a superhero, that man always wins. Spider-Man always wins. And that's the only way I can keep calm over another Cena win. And the idea of him trying to, or possibly beating Lesnar at this rematch at the next pay-per-view.
I don't think he will.
Well, I don't think he will. I really, really hope they don't go down that route. Otherwise, it's just ridiculous.
How do you feel about John Cena as a character?
There's been times where I've not minded him too much. When he first came into it and he had the whole rap gimmick, bearing in mind he's been in it over 10 years, and you think, well, yeah, there's a few odd moment, and it's just the whole goofiness. But
I've heard it from both sides, because to me, I interviewed a guy called Mike Lawrence. He's a New York stand-up comedian.
Right.
And he was talking about John Cena, and he was telling me what he doesn't like about Cena And this is he has a point actually, but what he doesn't like about Cena is the fact when he comes out and he rams down everybody's throat every week that he's here more than anybody else. He does more than anybody else, and he's been in the business 10 plus years, and he deserves this and he deserves that. But the point that Mike Lawrence made was that the only reason he's still in the WWE is because he's a failed actor. You know, he's tried movies, he's tried music, and he failed at both of those. So really, wrestling is his only backfall, which I think is a good. I don't know whether I accept that argument, but it's a good point.
No, I mean, he's been on top for a long time. Obviously, he's making great money and everything, and he probably just thinks, well, look, if I get another 5 years out of this, it's a lot of money, and everything. They've obviously struggled with other headliners. They really, really have, going back to, bits that we've covered earlier on. My problem is just a constant new merchandise every other week by looks of it, and it's just so irritating. I understand he's aimed at kids and things like that, and I know some adults like him as well, but no, I think it's just that sort of shoved down your throat. And I was speaking to someone earlier on today, and we were worried that Roman Reigns will go the same way.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just because of the lack of top tier talent, and that's why they have to do it. And it's got to be on Raw, it's got to be on SmackDown, and you're having these sort of almost like for like pay-per-view matches because they only have, say, 5 people, to rotate.
I think the biggest problem with Roman Reigns, he's really, really green on his own. He's very green in the ring. He's only got a limited move set, and he needs to kind of learn quick about how to act with the crowd and how to get on his own,
Well, I don't know though, because you think about it, they shouldn't really be pushing him this much. He's been in it a couple of years. Again, if we go back to, we'll go back to when we started watching wrestling, and you look at the likes of Shawn Michaels, and even in WWF, they've been in it since like late 80s.
Yes.
And then he had a few years as a tag team wrestler, 3 or 4, well, longer in other territories, and then you've got that sort of, I'm keeping you at the intercontinental level. And it took obviously till 96 for him to win the title. And then really, he only had those 2 years at the top before getting injured. And even when he did come back, 2002, up until him actually retiring, he obviously went away sometimes. He sort of had this sort of semi-part-time schedule. And there's times again, I suppose he was at that level where Chris Jericho is now. He'd come back, he's not always in the title picture, but he'd be, elevating talent,
I think
there's just no one there to do that anymore.
I think you're absolutely right, actually. Now I'm thinking about this because at the end of the day, I also think today's product moves too fast because it's more about kind of selling TV programs and other angles than it is about proper buy rates and stuff for and ratings.
No, definitely.
If you look at also, I mean, how terrible. I'm not knocking Nikki and Brie Bella. Well, I am a little bit, I guess. But if you look, I think what really aggravates me is to look at. They're hot. I got to admit, they are nice to look at. But on the mic, they are terrible. And the only reason that I don't buy, like everybody else doesn't buy into the feud, is because next week on Total Divas, they're being the friendly sisters again, It just doesn't work.
Problem. It's a major problem, that. And I think that's just it, again, when you look at Total Divas and it shows, who they're married to and, well, who with John Cena and things. And it's sort of killing that sort of...
Killing the mythos of wrestling,
Yeah, really. Yeah, was trying to think of, really.
And I tell you what's funny is I was listening to Bill Goldberg. I don't know if you listened to Goldberg's podcast, but
I've not done yet.
That's really cool. You should check it out. He was talking on there about basically he wouldn't be able to be Goldberg, the wrestler, if he had the same attention as the wrestlers do now, because basically all your real life is told through the eyes of the camera now, and he wouldn't be able to be that character because it would take everything away from it.
No, definitely. I mean, it was a Pro Wrestling Torch podcast with Stone Cold, and he was saying it's quite difficult if he did come back for one match, where obviously everything would be watched, what he says, what he does, how he acts, and things like that. So it's a far more controlled, environment
Yes.
now. So I think that sort of does kill momentum for some people as well. I don't think you're going to see the amazing promos, like the Austin 316 and things. I think the closest we came to it was the CM Punk one from about 2011, 2012. With the pipe bomb, and he sat at the top of the ramp, and that was obviously a massive moment. But then when you later find out, well, no, that was all scripted, and they okayed it, roughly, and just gave him a few plot points, it takes away so much. What I don't understand is, though, we've got so many agents who work there, who know the business. They've worked in different territories and stuff, and there's still something missing. You got the likes of, Dave Finlay. You've got like IRS and others, but the new stars, they do struggle.
I think the biggest problem as well is that I've heard on the grapevine that a lot of the script writers are actually Hollywood movie script writers and not anything to do with the business as well.
No, I've heard that. I mean, again, remember they had Freddie Prinze Jr. writing for a little while for them.
That's right.
I can't remember what year that was, but it's obviously they write for television. I believe, fair enough, there's not a problem with that, but you also need to be writing, as a wrestler, and things like that. You need that mixture. I know we class it as sports entertainment, but you still need to have that sort of know your history and things. But we only ever really use the history around WrestleMania. Again, we touched upon that before, and I don't think it's something that they look back fondly upon all the time.
No. How do you? Before we have to move on, man, definitely. But
definitely.
How do we wrap this up? Let's wrap this up by asking you about CM Punk. What do you feel about CM Punk, and do you think he'll ever return to the wrestling ring?
I have this conversation with my nephew, and he's 12, and this is going to quickly touch upon this for only a second.
Okay.
But, when we said, when did we start watching wrestling and really getting into it and things, and he's like at that age in the last year or so, and he's like, oh, Paul, have you seen this? Have you read this bit of news? And obviously excited to hear it. So we talk about, will CM Punk come back quite a lot? And again, he's in the 2K15 game, something I was really, really surprised about.
Yeah.
But I can't really see him coming back, at least not for a few years. I mean, I think he's roughly our age, so mid-30s, you'd still have a few years. I know, AJ Lee's, back with WWE at the moment.
Yes.
But I don't think he needs to. Unless, obviously, he's just daft with his money. But from what you hear on podcasts and news, he's meant to be quite sensible. Same with Stone Cold Steve Austin. When you listen to his podcast, he says, he'll look for a bargain and things like that. And obviously, he made loads of money. Obviously, a lot more than, I can only presume a lot more than CM Punk. But I'd be very surprised if we saw him back in a wrestling ring.
I think
within the next couple of years.
I think I agree with you, and I think it's good luck to him, I think he just like everybody else in any job. I mean, I've heard people bitch and moan about CM Punk leaving and why and all this kind of stuff, and to me, Paul, he just had enough, he was tired, he just had enough.
Yeah, definitely. It's all the constant travelling.
Exactly.
It's what we touched upon before. No one gets an off season. You're on 2 or 3 shows. You've got the house shows, so it's just here's your 2 days off a week. And I think the whole wear and tear on your body, as well as the travelling, you're not having time to actually rest up. And you think even just he still had, I think 2006 he went on to ECW. So you think 7, getting on 8 years, wrestling that schedule, you're going to be quite beaten up.
And also, if you look at Punk now, how refreshed does he look, man?
I know, exactly. You saw every week his eyes were just, well, so heavy,
Big bags under his eyes.
Yeah, exactly. He looked so much older, and obviously, good luck to him, because it's not worth, obviously, putting yourself into an early grave. But
well,
apparently, that's an entire podcast.
Apparently, he's got his own podcast on the way, which is going to be amazing, and apparently, he's going to be in his own band, which will be pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I think that'd suit him, definitely. He can talk, and also is into his music, going off when I watched his DVD documentary and everything, and yeah, good luck to him, definitely.
So let's talk movies, man. I mean, what are the movies that float your boat?
Favourite ones, I would say Shawshank Redemption. I know it's an obvious one, just for a good, strong story.
Awesome.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, amazing.
Yes.
There's not a thing wrong with that. I would say I like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End. So the whole Cornetto trilogy of Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. Into me horror films quite a bit, but I've just not watched as many movies recently because I've got more into the gaming over the last year.
Right.
It's yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to think like the last great movie I saw. I've not really seen much at cinema, sadly. But
I think for me, I've been a massive Spielberg fan since I was a kid. I remember my parents used to go away quite a lot on to Yorkshire and stuff to go to wedding fairs because my parents used to own a bridal shop. So when they used to go away, me and my brother, because my brother's 5 years older than me, he used to look after me and like give me movie nights and stuff. And one of the first movie nights we had was Jaws, and ever since I've seen that, ever since as a little kid, Jaws has been my favourite movie of all time. But it's just funny how seeing things as a kid, you kind of, what other movies have these guys been in? And from there, I learned from all the other Spielberg films,
No, I mean, I've listened to your episode with the guy from, is it the Bearded Trio?
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was for sure yours I listened to. I really enjoyed that. And I think with Spielberg, I've not seen all his films. I've seen a few. Obviously, I've seen Jaws. It's just, I don't know. I think back and some of them just don't appeal to me too much.
Right.
But I think when I go quickly going back to Raiders, for me, I've always been like a massive Harrison Ford fan. Like he's my favourite actor. So whatever he's in, I'll watch. Granted, there's been some bad films, but there's been like a load of great ones as well, like Mosquito Coast, Regarding Henry, Presumed Innocent, Fugitive, Air Force One. So he's done I think a lot better films than awful ones.
Yeah, legend.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you feel about? Let's talk about the new Star Wars. I know J.J. Abrams is at the helm, so how do you feel these movies are going to go? I've got the vibe that it's going to have a really classic, old school Star Wars feel. Like the originals.
Yeah, definitely. I think after doing the prequels, and we had a few okay moments and everything, but I think everyone knows the backlash they got really.
Yeah.
So it's sort of don't do that.
I think
do more like this.
I think the biggest thing we missed in the originals, the prequels, was the humour. There was no real humour in it.
Yeah, no, that's definite. Even when we redid the originals with the little bits of extra footage, they seem to put in little bits like having hand stamp on Jabba's tail, things, and that's what you need. I'm expecting something really, really good from this, and the fact that they're obviously acknowledging, the previous film's history. Obviously, J.J. Abrams, great filmmaker.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Super 8.
Oh, yes.
That was a really good film, and again, it sort of captured that whole childhood feel.
How old school did that feel, though? I mean,
I know exactly.
When I was watching that, I watched it in the cinema, and it absolutely blew me away because being a big Spielberg fan, I just thought E.T. It was just a new version of E.T. But
Yeah,
the
no, I
the
can see that.
vibe and the feeling was there, you know.
No, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think I'm gonna try and just move on a little bit, to the TV side.
Okay.
And I think this is one reason why I've not watched as many films because it's like, sometimes like with my wife, it's should we watch something, right? Do you want to watch a film or do you want to watch a TV series? And I'd say, obviously, in the last 5 6 years, as we know, TV has obviously got so popular. Well, probably even before 5 or 6 years,
Yes.
with big stars obviously appearing in it. Obviously, when 24 was on,
Yeah.
I used to love that, and even when it came back a couple of months ago, it was still okay. Obviously, Breaking Bad, Sopranos, and obviously they're quite time consuming. Again, everything comes back to time.
Yes.
So I do find it a lot easier though to sit down and watch something like that. I've been
Yes.
one called The Strain, and that started. Well, it's in America at the moment, done by Del Toro, and it's sort of a proper horror series. And Walking Dead's coming back soon. And
Very cool.
yeah, it takes a lot of time.
So what are the what are the classic TV shows that you remember watching?
Yeah, going back, God, I was really, really young, but I was brought up on things like Monty Python from my dad, Fawlty Towers, Young Ones. It's a lot of, the British comedy,
Right.
which I still like now.
Yes.
And then obviously going on to Bottom. So again, when Rick Mail passed away, and another, big part of childhood, quite
So
sad.
many.
I know it's been a bad year for people like that, but
Robin Williams.
yeah,
I was at, like recently Richard Attenborough. I mean,
yeah,
just off the top of my head, I can remember two absolute films that I love. Great Escape was one for me that I really liked, and Jurassic Park was just an absolute legendary film for me.
yeah, definitely. I remember watching that at the cinema, and obviously Jurassic Park was massive when that came out, absolutely massive. And I remember my mate buying a computer game, for Super Nintendo and everything, and obviously the Jurassic Park figures,
Yeah.
lunchboxes, everything, proper marketing giant. Yeah, so sadly, loads of people have, passed away this year. I can't think of any other TV ones off the top of my head, really. What about yourself?
I think for me personally, Quantum Leap is my favourite TV show.
Ah, yeah. See, I know, because I was on about this to someone the other week, because he'd never seen it. He's a bit younger than us. He's
Okay.
mid-20s.
Right.
See, Quantum Leap started, was it late 80s?
Late
Really?
80s to early
Yeah.
90s, yeah.
It had I think it was either 5 or 6 seasons, and obviously it was great.
It
Will he
was.
get home? Will he get home? And it made you carry on watching it. And I remember obviously X-Files and Millennium.
Yes.
I'm just trying to think what else. Those are the proper main ones.
I think-
as a teenager.
I remember so many little things though. I remember watching kind of Sequest DSV with Roy Scheider in on a
Yeah,
Saturday
never
afternoon,
bothered,
and
but I remember it. I do remember it.
I remember even like normal TV shows like The Crystal Maze and stuff like that.
Oh, of course, yeah, that's a cult classic, definitely. And obviously I remember things like Games Master and Bad Influence, and again being on the game side, I absolutely loved watching them. But that's just it. Oh, I love Nightmare as well. That was,
Yes, he's another guest I try to get on the
Really?
podcast, the Dungeon Master from Nightmare. I've got one coming up with Dominic Diamond though, so that should be pretty cool.
Oh, excellent. I loved his his rude jokes, nicely disguised. Don't do entendres. Yeah, he was a master of them. Really, really was.
So let's wrap this
it.
thing up, man, by
Yeah.
talking music. What kind of music is Paul into?
Oh God, I used to be into all the old school dance and rave. When it was popular in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Still into Prodigy. They were like the best dance group for me, and you think years on now, seen them quite a few times, got to meet, two of them I didn't get to meet Liam, unfortunately. That was a few years ago, and that was like amazing moment.
Right.
Then I got into like a lot of metal, like Megadeth and Metallica, but then into more of me 80s stuff like In Excess and U2 and Level 42, The Cure, Sisters of Mercy. So I went through this whole 80s, time. Duran Duran.
Nice.
But then I'd say now it just comes to a point that the bands that are still going, the only ones that are still going that I like, still Metallica, still Megadeth, Green Day, Maximo Park, Biffy Clyro. A few of those I've got into, from my wife, and that's probably about it now. I don't listen to as much music since getting into podcasts in a big way.
Yes.
So I find it easy to listen to a load of chat like this.
I think that the reason that the podcast industry is so huge now is because of time, and I think a lot of people like to do it on their commute and stuff like that as well. Yeah,
definitely. It's just even like while I'm at the house as well.
Yeah.
Kitchen, making tea, whatever, put on a podcast for a bit, and it's just easy escapism. And like you say, it's on the go.
So for one, I've got one final question for you, man.
Go for it.
And that is, I want to know your take on today's WWE and what you actually think about going forward. Do you think we're going to see the WWE kind of turn a corner?
I can't really see it changing. I think if we ask the same question again in 6 months' time, that's how little. I would say, hang on, that probably takes us to just before WrestleMania, and hopefully, we will get either another chat, either just, between us on Twitter or whatever. But I think depending how the rollout goes worldwide with the network, and also if the network price increases over in the US, it's either going to put a lot of people off. So let's just say they get 300,000 subscribers. Sorry, we'll just say that. So
right.
It takes it to the million, right? They put the price up in February, and then they lose 150,000. So really then, from the 300,000 they wanted to gain, they've only got half of that. So it's a very dangerous time, really, for them. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and obviously we've got shareholders and people to please, but we'll see where we're at, February, March time.
Well, let me say two things. One, let me say a big thank you to coming on the show today, because that's been absolutely outstanding, man. I've loved every second of it. And two, there's going to be a part 2. I think it's going to be after the Royal Rumble. I think we're going to have to do this again, man. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, obviously, I'll always come on, chat wrestling and everything like that. I think that's quite obvious. I can go on and everything. But yeah, it's again, obviously I want to say please check out our podcast Retro Asylum as well.
Yeah.
The Mick Foley cheap pop.
I second that.
Yeah. And obviously check out the show. I know we're not as varied like what you do, but obviously if you're into your retro games, then check us out. We'll obviously keep that quite varied and everything. And I've really, really enjoyed tonight. Definitely. Had a good chat.
Thanks so much, Paul. That's
no worries.
That's been really good.
No worries. I'll speak to you soon, Carl.
See you later, mate. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.